Mr. Shahrooz, I'm going to ask my question in two languages, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
First in English, and then I'll translate it. There are some rumors regarding the sanction and your point of view. I want to know your real position about the sanction on Iran. And if you don't mind, I'm going just to say it in Farsi. شایعات زیادیه در مورد اینکه دیدگاه‌های شما نسبت به تحریم ایران از طرف کانادا، از طرف جامعه دول غربی زیاد مشخص نیست. من از شما خواهش میکنم که دیدگاه اصلی خودتون و واقعی خودتون رو اینجا بیان کنید. مرسی.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Is it okay if I respond in English?
Of course.
For everybody in the room?
Of course.
Thank you very much. That's a great question, and it's a tough question. It's a fair question. And it's a question that I get a lot, actually, when I'm out there, especially talking to Iranian Canadians, because it's an issue that affects them very closely. I think, regrettably, there are some misconceptions about my views on sanctions, because I think, regrettably, sometimes people want, yes or no answers from you. They say, are you in favor of sanctions or against sanctions? And the truth of the matter is, oftentimes, policy discussions require sort of more complicated and nuanced answers. My view on sanctions, and you said, what's your real view? I've never hidden my view on sanctions. My views on sanctions are actually well documented. I have them on my website. You can go and read my articles. You can see my testimony in Canada's Senate. My view has always been, and I'm a devoted human rights activist, and I've devoted a lot of time to working on human rights. My view has always been that Canada's sanction policy, if there is to be sanctions, should target those who commit human rights violations in Iran. And there is no shortage of people that commit human rights violations in Iran. Iran's prisons are full of political prisoners. And so if there are going to be sanctions, those who commit human rights violations should be subjected to sanctions. There should be asset freezes. They shouldn't be allowed to travel, and so on and so forth. Where I do have a problem with the sanctions policy is where I think sanctions are badly designed. And I think there are places in which the sanctions policy is badly designed. There are situations, and I think especially the Iranian Canadians in the room would know this, where people with close ties to the Iranian government have been able to evade sanctions and come to this country and buy property and so on. And real legitimate refugees, for example, can't get into this country. Or people that want their grandmother or uncle or aunt to come visit them, they can't do it. I think that's a badly designed policy. And I think there are places, there are things that we can work on where we target the right people, the human rights violators, and keep them out and try as much as possible to put pressure on them and make life easier for ordinary Iranians and Iranian Canadians. I'll give you an example. On the issue of sanctions, when I think that sanctions are being badly applied, I think, for example, they were being badly applied when TD Bank was indiscriminately, more or less, closing the bank accounts of Iranian Canadians. I was very outspoken. Not to toot my own horn, but I can't think of anyone else in the Iranian Canadian community who was more vocal on that issue, because I thought that the sanctions were not actually harming the Iranian government, they were harming ordinary people. So I think on the issue of sanctions, I'm really glad you raised that point, because I think there is a lot of misconception on this point. To clarify misconceptions, I'll also say one other thing sort of related to that point. The Iranian Canadian community, Iranians generally, have a lot of wonderful qualities. We're hardworking, we've done well for ourselves, we tend to be very educated. But one problem I think that exists in our community is that there's a segment of the population, maybe a small one but a vocal one, that tries very, very hard to kind of target people and label them as this or that. There's a fair bit of rumor mongering, if you will, and you alluded that there are rumors about sanctions, and I've been the recipient of that, and I've been the victim of that to some extent. I've been consistently a human rights activist, and I think the role of the human rights activist is to speak for the vulnerable, and free of any party, free of any organization. So it's my duty, for example, if somebody is a monarchist, if they're being imprisoned, it's my duty to speak out for them. If a Baha'i or a Kurd is being imprisoned or treated unjustly, it's my duty to speak out for them, not because I'm a monarchist or a Baha'i or a Kurd, but because I'm a human rights activist. If a reformist is being thrown in prison, it's my duty to speak out for them. If people are being targeted in Camp Ashraf, it's my duty to speak out for them. That doesn't make me a reformist or a mujahid or a this or that. It just makes me a human rights activist. And I know that there are people out there the role of the human rights activist isn't to side with one party or another, but it's to speak out for everybody and to create some degree of unity and to speak consistently for democracy and human rights, and that's what I've tried to do. Thank you very much.